Thanks for your interest in Shivvers grain drying equipment. This tape, along with the operational instructions manual, will provide you with a step-by-step operational procedure of the CompuDry Command Center. You will learn about all of the settings, startup procedures, how to start the system, operational drying procedures, the simplicity of drying grain automatically, and how to fine-tune the Command Center to get the best efficiency and the most capacity out of your dryer. Keep in mind that the CompuDry Command Center is easy to operate and as automatic as you let it be. First, a word about safety and basic machine setup. Make sure that the jaw clutch, which runs the circulator, is engaged, and the pin, which runs the horizontal unload auger, is disengaged. Make sure that all shields are in place on all the augers for safety. Make sure the entrance door is closed when locked, and all the safety decals are in place. We're going to talk about the Plenum control settings first. Right here we have it set on set display, 0 for dim, 1 for bright. You're probably going to want to keep it at 1. Next we have the fan shutdown time in minutes. This is the amount of time that the drying fan will continue to run after the low grain switch shuts the burner off and the circulator and all the augers. That can be set from 1 minute the whole way up to 120, whatever you want to keep it at. Next we have target temperature. Target temperature is the temperature that the computer picks to run at based on the moisture sample that it took. This will fluctuate and change. You can initially set it anytime you want to. It will always be under the maximum setting or the maximum or less. Then here's the actual temperature that the computer is trying to run. This is your plenum temperature under the floor. It's usually right around near target temperature. Maximum is what you don't want the computer to go over. We can change that up to 170, 180. If you have a performance system, it can go as high as 200 degrees. Non-performance, 180. Then we have the minimum. Minimum you always want to have at 55 degrees to prevent overdrying. Display temperature calibration. Right now we have a +4 degrees in there. If you have an actual temperature gauge thermometer that you're looking at someplace, we have it right here. It says it's 154, and the one that you're looking at says it's 148. I'd probably believe that one. In this position, we want to go down to 148. Now the two match. This and matches with the thermometer. This will tell you that you lowered it now 5 degrees. Now we're going to talk about the moisture control settings. This is the module on the left side of the computer. First of all, down here at the bottom, we have set the grain type. Most of you will be running on corn, milo, and wheat, which is 0. If you want soybeans or oilseed, you would change that to number 1 up here. You have your set display for dim or bright, 1 for bright, 0 for dim, the same as the other side. Now we have the set transfer moisture. This is where you're going to set your moisture that you want it to transfer from your grain bin, drying bin, over to your storage bin. Just as easy as going up to 16.2 or down to 15.9, whatever way you want to go. Keep in mind that you'll take anywhere from a point to a point and a half below this out in cooling. This here is just a readable setting. You want to read and see what the temperature of the last sample of grain, when it took a sample, what the temperature that is. I also can calibrate that. If I take a sample and I find out that the sample is not 118, that it's 115, I can turn it down to 115. Now I've matched the calibration on that. This is the last moisture sample that the computer took. Last sample, individual moisture in percent. We have it set at 15.9. The last sample was 15.8. Now we have an average up here. We're going to talk about the average when we get over to here. This is the last sample. This is the moisture average. Here we have a reading that tells you for the last 12 hours the machine has been running, how many transfers it made and what the percentage of the moisture was. For the last 12 hours, this has been averaging 15.6, and it made 2 transfers. So you can see if the machine is drying corn. This tells you how many minutes it's going to be till the next time it takes a sample. This you can't set. This the computer just regulates The first time you start it, it'll be 10 minutes. Every time it takes a sample from that point on while it's in operation, you'll see 5 minutes in there. When it gets down to 0, it's going to take another sample. Here's where we set the set number of samples in the average. This correlates with this up here. If you have a circulator 2, you want that set at 4. If you have a circulator 1, you want that set at 7. It will go up to 9, but you want the circulator 1 at 7. That's because it takes 35 minutes with a circulator 1 to make a complete revolution around the grain bin. If I'm taking computer samples here in 5-minute increments, 5 divided by 35 is 7. When I get to a circulator 2, I can do it twice as fast, so I really should have 3.5 there, but since I don't have 3.5, I'm going to put 4. So indirectly, what you're doing right here, last sample, this gives you an average the whole way around the bottom of the grain bin. It keeps the grain dryer running when you get into wet spots and dry spots and hot spots and cool spots where it's going to normally want to stop. This is a 12-hour look. There we have that set at 4. Here's where you set the continuous flow auger in seconds, so it allows time to clean out. So when the dryer stops from up here, a 2 wet sample comes over here and says I'm going to take 21 minutes to take another sample. It lets this auger clean out for 15 seconds. That's settable. You can go up to 20, 25 seconds, whatever you need to. Down here at the bottom, we have the set sweep off time. We have several settings on there. We can start at 0. 0 means when the computer gets a wet sample, it's going to wait 10 minutes to come back on. When it's at number 1, it's going to wait somewhere between 10 and 60. It's going to pick its own time. When it's at number 2, it's a fixed 20. When it's at number 3, it's 20 to 60. It'll pick a time in between there. Number 4 is the computer is going to automatically adjust it, but you want the computer to start at 0, which is 10 minutes. So if the computer sees a wet sample, it's going to wait 10 minutes to come back on. And if you read the instruction manual says that if it takes 5 samples in a row that are too wet, because it's on automatically adjust, it will switch itself to number 1. The positions that I would recommend and Shivvers would recommend for you to run at is either the automatically adjust or the number 3, which is 20 to 60. Either one of those two. You want 3 or 4.0 and let the computer automatically adjust it. The red light right here means that I have power to the computer. I can start anything else in here now. If it's not lit, I can't start the computer. So I've got power here, the breaker's turned on. This is off, put that down to run, nothing happens. It's spring loaded, push it down to start. Pops back up and stays on. That puts power to the module above. And this is the drying fans off or enable. The light says enable. You need that light on. You need that light on even just to run the fans for aeration. Don't have to have this switch on to do that. For example, let's turn that one back off. I can turn that one to enable. Now I can run the fans for aeration. So we'll just kind of do it backwards right here. You physically can go out and start the fan now. With that in the off position, you can't do it. So the reverse is true also. If the fans were running right now and you needed to shut the fans off, you can turn that and shut the fans off because it breaks the safety circuit. So we're going to turn that on. We're going to go back and start this up. You need these 4 lights lit to get the computer running. Since I have no grain in there, or not very much at this point, I need to put this up in bypass. If it's down on automatic, the light won't stay lit until I get grain above there and pull grain away from underneath, let it run for maybe a half hour, an hour into the drying cycle for it to go down into the automatic side. The toggle switches in the lower part are all for the machines and the actual motors, and we'll start those motors. This is the one for the circulator itself. This is the one for continuous flow or second continuous flow or transfer, whichever ones you have down. A good habit you'd like to get into, and it'll just save you some headaches down the road. Every time you start up the computer, take these switches and put them in the run position, which is just like an off and on. You hear the starter engaged, and you're going to run the motor for 5 seconds. You just want to make sure that everything is working fine. You want to do that with the continuous flow augers. You go the whole way down through to make sure that all the augers are running because you don't know how long it's been setting. Now when you want to run this in full operation, Now we're going to use the automatic side. We're going to just turn one continuous flow auger on, and we're going to turn the automatic side of the machine on. Now the computer is ready to go. Now that you've learned the moisture control and the plenum control and all the toggle switch settings, we're going to do a basic startup showing you how to operate the plenum control side without the moisture control side running, because you have wet corn that you're starting the season off with, and I need to get it pre-dried. So we're going to do a pre-dry with the plenum control right from the start. Go down here again, we're going to spring load this, start control panel. We're going to go to the fan enable switch so we can physically go back and start the fans. We're going to go up to bypass right here so all our lights are lit. Now you would go back, turn the toggle switch for the fans on because you can, turn the toggle switch for the burner on, make sure the gas valves are open, and this will start and fire the burner. Up here I want to take this control, just up or down. This is a module number. We want to get that to say 888. You can either go down or up. We're going to go up. Now the burner is purging. We're going to see these lights lit, a pair of lights here and a pair of lights there as soon as the burner fires. It's going to fire the burner. We've got our maximum set in here at 177. We got our minimum set in here at 55. And we've got a target temperature here of 140. Now the burners have fired. Remember, target temperature is the temperature that the computer wants to run at based on the moisture sample it got. Right now the moisture control is not running. We're just pre-drying. So I can set this however I want to set it. If I want to set it higher, I can set it higher. Without the moisture control side running, after 1 hour's time, and it doesn't receive a signal from the moisture control side, it will lower the temperature 12 degrees, again, to prevent over drying. Because you may walk away for 3 hours and say, I forgot. Okay, don't worry about it, the computer's going to turn it down. Then every half hour thereafter, it's going to turn it down 12 degrees more if it doesn't receive information from over here. So we're going to let it run for about 3 hours in this position to get the grain pre-dried, because we know it's wet. It's no use to take a sample. We've got this side already set. We got 15 minutes there. We know that when we actually get drying, we want to go up to 177 degrees. Minimum's all set there, so we're all ready to dry. Now that we've been over here pre-drying for a couple hours, you see we had 142 in there earlier, and for a couple hours this has dropped us down to 112 degrees. On the target side over here, 115, because we were away, and it dropped to 12 degrees every hour and 12 degrees a half hour. We know we got corn fairly dry now on the bottom. Now we want to see what the moisture is. Remember, every time you come over here and play with these switches, the first thing you want to do is run the circulator. Yep, it's still fine. It's still fine. And again, if this is the first time, you're going to want to let this run for maybe a half hour. You want to polish the sweeps and set the sweeps for the first time, because this has never ran grain through this before. So we're going to let that run for maybe a half hour, just circulate grain in there. Normally only let it run for 5 seconds. Assuming you've been running for a half hour, let's go down and put it in the automatic side. We're going to run the circulator, or the continuous flow auger. Now we're going to put that in the automatic side. We know everything's working. 115 degrees, adjust up or down till it says 888. Now we're running over here. Well, you know what the settings are. First thing we're going to do is go over here, and now that the computer is all running, the printer is going to come to life, and it's going to print how all these settings are, just so you have a written record on tape, date and everything, exactly what time you started drying. The computer is going to wait 10 minutes till it takes the first sample. We're timing down to 6, 7, 6. When it gets to 0, this is going to come on, the light's going to come on, the starter's going to energize, and it's going to want to take a sample of corn. So we're going to go over and look at where we have it set. Well, let's say you don't want it 15.9, you want it 16.1. Now's your time to change it. There's no readings in here right now, other than we have a 3-degree calibration on temperature of grain. We're going to take that back out. We want to go the other way. Take that to 0. So there's no calibrations anywhere. We'll show you later on how to calibrate this. When that light blinks, we're taking a sample. It takes 10 samples, 3 seconds apart in real operations. Demo operation here, it goes a little faster. If 5 pops up there, that means it's a good sample, and this auger was turned on, and we're going to transfer corn. The moisture was 15.5. The moisture average of 4, it's only the first one it took, is still 15.5. And this would be the 12-hour look back, because again, it's the first one. And we've only made one transfer in there. Now, if we start getting into wet corn over here, then the computer will go over and raise target temperature. Target temperature will go up as high as 177 degrees. But right now the computer's saying, I don't need to go up that high. We're fine because my moisture is less than where I have it set. This is my transfer. That's the actual temperature of that corn, 128 degrees. We've just made the second transfer. Second setting was 15.3. There's just made 2 of them. That's the average. Minutes till next sample. There it is, the third sample. This will continue to do this all day long, 24 hours a day, automatically adjusting everything. Doesn't matter what the moisture is coming in or coming out from the field. We have the continuous flow setting. We've set that before for 23 seconds. We have the sweep at number 3, which is the 20 to 60. We have the average here at 4 for circulator 2, 7 for circulator 1. This is circulator 2, so let's go back to 4, and we have everything set. Made 3 transfers. The average is 15.5. The longer this runs, the higher this number is going to get to this. If I do get wetter samples, I'm getting some wetter samples coming in here now. Now we jumped up here. We're going to start raising it over here because we got wetter samples here. Now we're coming back to the machine after it's been running several hours. You can see that the target temperature went from 130, we're the whole way up to 177 maximum now. And we're going to show you another startup. This is a different startup because you've got grain preheat and everything running, but what happened right now is you ran out of corn. So we turned everything off. It turned the circulator off, it turned the burner off. We're letting the fan run for this amount of time right here. And we want to start it back up now. You don't need to start this side and preheat. So we're just going to turn everything right off. Turn it all back on. You went away from it. We're going to come back here. We're going to start this up right here. We're going to enable the fan. We're going to go up to bypass because this is what turned it off. Again, I just run that circulator. Again, I'd run that continuous flow auger like that. I'll put them down to automatic. Now we have both modules blinking the module number. The burner switch is still on. Physically, you have to go back and turn the fan on. Once you turn the fan on, I don't want to change any of the settings because everything is good from before. All you have to do is activate this moisture side right here, up or down till it says 888. Nothing's running right now except the fan. When that says 888, this will start right in. It's going to print out all the settings because it's a new start. This side says I can't run until you're running, so it's going to come over and start this side. Make it say 888 and go from where you were before. Now the whole system is back started. The typical settings that you're going to want to set this at or run this at, most farmers will run this under actual temperature here and run it over here so they can see the 12-hour average and to see the number of samples that it's taking. Number of samples is the number of transfers that it's sending over to the other bin. That way you know your machine's working. You see your lights coming on here, your sweep running. Sweep's not running yet. We've got 3 more minutes. We want to time it down and take it right away. We can. Now the light's running. So now we start it all back up. So this time you start everything at the same time. I don't need to pre-dry because the corn was dried already in there when it shut off. So I can start everything up back at the same time just by turning that moisture module on, moisture control. Now that we got this all running, you've got the 2 different startups under different scenarios. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some basic operational procedures in here, mostly calibrations. A couple things you need to remember. These are key. You want to set it, you want to calibrate it, and you want to forget it. Set it, you know how to do that. You don't know how to calibrate it, but calibration is real important. But once you get it set, calibrated, then you want to walk away from it. Just forget it. Let the computer do what it's supposed to do. There are 3 things that you can calibrate. We briefly talked on the temperature over here. The printout right here tells you all the calibrations if there is any. Moisture calibration, right now it's showing 0. Grain temperature calibration, 0. Plenum temperature calibration, 0. So it tells you all that. There's 7 columns that it prints out here. The first column is the time. The second column is the actual moisture from that position right there. The third column is the temperature of the grain from that position right there. The fourth column is the average, which is from that position right there. The fifth column is the machine status. The machine is the continuous flow auger, whether it's on or off. You'll see the word on, or you'll see a little dash for off. The sixth column is the target temperature, which is 177, which is what it's showing down here. The actual temperature is the last column. That should be close to target temperature. If it isn't, then you need to give it a little more gas pressure. If actual temperature can never reach target temperature, you don't have enough gas pressure. If you have too much gas pressure, it's going to cycle on and off from high to low to off a whole bunch. You don't want it to do that. So you got to get your gas pressure adjusted and your vaporizer just the right temperature for correct operation. Let's go over the calibrations again. The very basic one, or you don't even have to do this if you don't want to, but I would always do it. I would check the thermometer. This says it's 177 degrees. You see it's always going to fluctuate with high fire and low fire. But you're going to have another thermometer. Let's just say your other thermometer says it's 170. This says it's 100. So either in this position or this position, I can lower that to 170. Now I've calibrated the grain temperature. I've lowered it 11 degrees if I want to see. I'll turn it back to here. Now the next time that the computer prints all this information out, it's going to show that you have lowered the grain temperature calibration by 11 degrees. Let's go over here to grain temperature. Last sample grain temperature, 120 degrees. You've taken the moisture of it, you've taken the temperature of it, and the temperature says it's 126. In that same position, raise that to 126. You can't do it while it's taking a sample. Let's wait till it's done taking a sample. It says I'm taking a sample right now, let your hands off. But I still want to add just 6 degrees because it was 120 and then what I took was 126. So we're just raising it 6 degrees. 126 right there. Now again, when it prints all this stuff out, it's going to tell you what the grain temperature calibrations are. The one that's really the most critical is the calibration of the moisture itself. Now here's how I would do it. You want to wait till it takes a sample. It's taking a sample right now, so you want to run and catch a sample from the little grain sample valve at the same time the computer is taking a sample. You want to have a pencil, and it's 16.1. You pull the tape up, and right here at 16.1, you want to circle that, so you don't forget which one it was. Now you want to take the grain sample to a place that you trust with moisture readings and testing, for instance, the elevator downtown. You go to the elevator is going to give you a slip, and he's going to tell you that that's 17.1. Well, then this is reading a point too low. Anytime you calibrate in any one of this position, actual temperature, grain temperature, or sample, all you're doing is matching a meter. Now, on your way back from the elevator, you decided it was 12 o'clock, you stopped for lunch. You stopped at the hardware store, and it's 3 hours later you come back. All you know when you come back is that the moisture that the elevator gave you was 17.1, and the moisture here, you have it circled so you don't forget that, was 16.1. So what I have to do is add 1 point to this, no matter what the number is at that point. So at this point, I would take that up to 18.1. Now I've calibrated at 1 point, I've made this reading match their reading. I have not changed the transfer moisture, it's still 16.1, but now I've calibrated. In the instruction book, the operating instructions tell you that when you calibrate it the first time, you do exactly as we said. If you forget how to do it, it's listed right here on the side. The second time you calibrate it, you may a couple days, 2-3 days later, check it again and say, I'm still a half point off. At that time, only go half of it. Go 2 to 3/10 of a point rather than a half point, because you don't want to go too far one way and then back the other way. Remember what we said at the beginning. Set it, calibrate it, and forget it. Now that you've learned the settings of the moisture control, the plenum control, operational procedures, different startup procedures, we're going to talk to you a couple things about fine-tuning. There's a couple things you can do about fine-tuning here to get the maximum bushels per hour out of your system at the most efficiency. One of the things, a farmer will typically run his system up here so he has a 12-hour look back. All this is doing is counting the number of transfers that it took out of the drying bin over to the storage bin and adding those up for you. It only adds up the ons that you see over here, not the offs. And they come out to 15.9. You have the moisture set at 16.1. What I really want is 16.1 up here instead of 15.9. So what you want to do is you want to raise this to 16.3, which eventually is going to put you 16.1 up there. That's going to give you 16.1 over into the bin, because everything that this dries, every time that this takes the last sample, it's always 16.1 or less before. So all we're doing is raising this so we can get 16.1 up there. But do that after you've ran it a day. Look at what it says up here. And what this says right here is what you want up here. So just change this to the difference. It's usually going to be 1 to 2/10 of a point. But that's going to pick up a little more capacity for you. The other thing that you can do over here is you have your set number of samples in average. A circulator 2, you want it 4. A circulator 1, you want it 7. Now what you want to do is study your tape. If I see some offs is a little dash. When I'm transferring corn over to the other bin, it says on. When this auger is running, it says on. When it gets to a wet sample, I have a little dash. What you want to do is look at those little dashes and see how far off they are. If the little dashes are, say, 1 to 2/10 of a point off, and they're consistent, you see an off there, you see an off there, you see an off there, say, oh, they're only 1 or 2/10 off. Remember, every time it gets one of those offs, it starts that average over again. Average 1, 2, 3, and 4. It starts those over again. So what I would do is probably set this up to number 5. Because if it had set been at 5 before, it would have stayed running longer, because the one that it turned off was almost there but not quite there. So I'd set it up to 5. And in a period of a day's time, you may get 200 more bushels an hour through this system. Not 200 bushels an hour, 200 bushels more through this system by just turning from 4 to 5. Don't do it automatically. Learn how to read and evaluate your tape, and that's the importance of having this printer. Once you get this all calibrated, remember we said earlier, set it, calibrate it, and forget it. When you do all that, you will learn what the term no babysitting means. How that you can put corn in here, in your drying bin at 22%, at 18%, no, it doesn't matter what. This controls it all, turns the heat up and down to prevent over drying and be consistent, and you could get coming out of here in this position exactly what you wanted there originally. So those are some things you can do to learn how to fine tune it a little bit.